Warning, the TikTok ban is a Trojan horse, and you better watch out. Now, the TikTok social media app, it's grown super fast. It's been an escalating lightning rod of debate in the United States, and now there's two bills that are about to go into laws that will restrict TikTok. But of course, it's just for your protection, of course, right? But digging into this bill, it's a Trojan horse. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing, and it's possibly the most freedom-restricting law that's ever been put forth. And I don't mean to overhype this, but it's the Patriot Act on steroids. It's times a million, and it's definitely not about your protection. So in this video, I'm going to break down why they're telling us that they're cracking down on TikTok. Then I'm going to break open these new bills. I'm going to show you exactly what they're saying in their own words. I'm going to explain what this means, the dangers it poses to your freedom, and yes, even your money. It's that big. It's that sweeping. And then I'm going to tell you what you can do to stop this now before it's too late. So let's go. Back to the video. So, TikTok, it's being banned. It's being banned in the United States, and this is, of course, like I said, for our safety. But I think it's part of a much bigger, a much darker plan that the U.S. government has to control the flow of information and communication and even our money. I've been talking a lot about, disinformation, misinformation, malinformation. It's the number one topic in Davos. It's all over the news. Protect the democracy, all those things. And they need to control the flow of information. Money is information. And this new bill is the most dangerous thing I've seen put forth. As a matter of fact, it was probably not even a year ago. I told some of the guys here in my video studio, I told my wife, I think that in the next 2 years, I may not be able to live in the United States and do what I do anymore, which is saying things that are critical about the government. And that's what this bill is going through will do. I may not be able to remain here and do what I'm doing anymore, and a lot of other people just like me. So let's dig in. Let's dig into these two new bills. There's two of them. There's called the Data Act and the Restrict Act. Now, the Restrict Act is probably the most restrictive. So let's take a look at that. But first, why? Why are they telling us? Why do they want to restrict TikTok? Or at least, like I said, why do they say they need to keep us safe? Safe from what? Well, safe from spying on us, right? Because TikTok is spying on us. Well, it's almost certainly a PR move. I mean, it's definitely true that the Chinese Communist Party, the Chinese government, exercises the right to control over the country's, technology and industry. And there's almost nothing that TikTok can do to prove to American users that the data isn't vulnerable to the Chinese government surveillance in some way, right? So we know that. But our phones, our apps, they already track everything. They already track everybody. And everybody from Comcast to the DMV already sells your personal information. The police and anyone else that wants to buy your movement data can buy it. Now, much of what the Chinese authorities would likely want from TikTok, including very detailed geolocation data, is already available from American data brokers. Now, there's more concrete evidence of this. We saw Tim Horton was secretly tracking their app users, tracking them more than TikTok does, and they were caught. They were caught using its mobile app to collect vast amounts of sensitive data, location data, in violation of Canadian privacy laws, and they were sued in a class action lawsuit. And to make up for tracking their users' location data, recording all their movements every few minutes, even when the app was closed, the chain just said, we'll give the affected users a free coffee and a donut. How's that? So it's already happens. Now, what about the moderation bias? So then you hear that, in China, they only allow people to see good, constructive, educational content. But in the United States, they lead us down this degenerate path, right? There's claims of that TikTok's a Chinese Communist Party propaganda channel. And according to leaked documents, it does look like TikTok has clearly had moderation biases in the past. So we can see examples like where Tiananmen Square videos were being suppressed. For example, China doesn't want that shown. We can also see how China censors references to drugs, but in the U.S., they're allowed on the network. But that's because of the laws, and that's cultural differences. It's certainly possible because, many states and agencies have now banned TikTok on government devices, so maybe they know something that we don't know. Now, I'm not an advocate for TikTok. I think it probably does more harm than good. It probably turns our kids' brains to mush. It definitely, for sure, ruins their attention span. So I'm not here to champion for TikTok, but I'm going to show you the Trojan horse because this is potentially the scariest thing I've seen. Like I said, potentially I won't be able to do what I'm doing here. So what are we really trying to do? Are we just trying to copy China? China has this social credit score system the whole rest of the world seems to want. So are we going to copy them? You know that China has something called the Great Firewall. And the Great Firewall is a firewall that protects their citizens from the internet that the free world has, the West, right? It protects their citizens from the likes of Facebook and Instagram and other Western ideas that could corrupt their own people. Is this what the U.S. wants? The U.S. wants to build its own Great Firewall? Well, probably. They probably do. The number one problem is misinformation. How do we stop it? Well, we have to block all communication, right? So let's dig into this bill. Let's see what's lying beneath the surface and the dangers and the risks that it poses. So if I dig into the bill, it's much deeper. It's much darker than what it seems on the surface. It always is. All these government bills always hide all kinds of garbage on the inside. But to really understand this, first we have to go all the way back in history to 2001, to the Patriot Act. And the Patriot Act was put into place, of course, when the World Trade Centers were taken down. And the Patriot Act was a sweeping bill that gave the government all types of control. Another way to say it was when the government has all types of control, it took away lots of our freedoms. As a matter of fact, the Patriot Act was probably the single most, probably the most comprehensive bill that took our freedoms away in one single act. Now, I could make an entire video just on that. Maybe I would if you leave me a comment down below and ask for that. But for the purpose of what we're trying to look at here, let's just look at this Restrict Act. So to understand the Restrict Act, we have to look at some definitions that were put in place in the Patriot Act. So for example, a definition called critical infrastructure. So what is that? Well, critical infrastructure is defined as systems and assets, physical or virtual, so vital to the United States that the incapacity or destruction of such systems and assets would have a debilitating impact on security, national economic security, remember that, national economic security, national public health or safety, or any combination of these matters. It's always for your safety, right? Now, information and communications technology, products or services basically relates to products or services as well as hardware, software, or other product or service primarily intended to fulfill or enable to function in information or data processing, storage, retrieval, communications by electronic means, including transmission and storage display. So basically everything. Now, one more definition, the transaction. What's a transaction? Well, for the purpose of the bill, a transaction is anything by anyone. The definition of transaction includes software updates, provision of data hosting services. Now, this is very broad, and it can be interpreted a bunch of different ways. So, for example, this could include updating a Bitcoin node or running a Bitcoin data center, Bitcoin mining, a Bitcoin wallet. It could affect your money, your Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, the ability to transact, but it's way bigger. It's way bigger than that. Now that we've already established some terms, let's dig into the bill. All right, so the Restrict Act is not just limiting TikTok, okay? That's what it is on its face. What's really below this Restrict Act is it gives the government authority over all forms of communication, domestic and abroad, and it grants powers to enforce any mitigation measure to address any risk to national security now and in any potential future transaction. Wow, it's pretty big. It's pretty sweeping. So what happens if you or I are designated as a national security threat? Well, they can now access all of your information to confirm that. Yep, they can look at everything, and it allows the Director of National Intelligence and Secretary of Commerce the authority to universally designate new foreign adversaries without any due process, such as notifying Congress, a 15-day window to notify the president. It also requires a joint resolution of Congress to overturn it. So these people, not elected, these non-elected officials have the right to unilaterally, universally designate you a foreign adversary, a threat, without any due process. And it would require a joint resolution of Congress to overturn that. Now, since foreign individuals can now also be U.S. citizens, so we can be foreign individuals now, and if we were deemed to be a national security threat, and of course, once designated, the bill grants authority to enforce any action deemed necessary to mitigate the threat. Like I said, with no due process and very few limits on punishment. All right, the Restrict Act will allow the government to access all the data on your video devices. If it's a service that uses over 1 million people, which includes pretty much all the main ones, your iPhone for sure, services like Ring doorbell, in-home security cameras, things like that, they can access all that. And if you use a VPN to try to get around this, if you're caught using a VPN or any other privacy device, well, after the federal government detains you with no due process, and to mitigate the immediate threat that you pose, they can then give you $1 million fine and 20 years in prison and forfeiture of everything that you own. How dare you use a privacy app like a VPN? You don't have the right to use a VPN. We have to see everything. And if you use something like that, we can put you in prison for 20 years, take every asset that you own, and fine you $1 million. And the act also grants unlimited hiring power to positions of enforcement. So they can continue to grow at any level they want, at any speed, any time. They can hire unlimited amount of people to enforce this. They have unlimited funds with little to no review, and they have immunity to FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act. So we the people are the government. The government is public servants for us. We are private citizens. The government are public servants. We are private citizens. They are public servants. We have the right to know everything about the government. They have no right to know anything about us. And because of that, we have something called the Freedom of Information Act, and we are supposed to be able to file this FOIA request and get any information that we want on them, the public government. But this has unlimited funds, no review, and immunity. You don't have the right to see what they're doing. Now, we got to bring this into attention. We have to tell our elected officials that we do not support this Restrict Act. All right, so what's really at stake here? Now, if you want to understand what the Restrict Act is, just think about the most Orwellian, evil, and repressive things that are in the Patriot Act, and then times it times 1,000,000,000,000. It's easily the most totalitarian piece of legislation in the history of the United States. Now, there's a whole host of people that are behind this bill, Republicans and Democrats. There's too many that I'm going to read off on this right now, but I am going to put a list down below in the description. And I want you to go read it because they certainly don't deserve your vote, but even more importantly, they deserve phone calls. They deserve letters. They deserve to be blasted on social media for going along with something like this. It's apparent. We already know the Communist Chinese Party wants to control your thoughts, control your speech, control your communication, control your ability to transact, but now the United States wants that as well. Not only your thoughts, your speech, not only your communication, they want to control your ability to transact your finances. They want to be able to now regulate Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies out of existence. And this isn't just for U.S. people. All right, this isn't just for U.S. people in the U.S. This is globally. All right, now back to TikTok, which is, of course, where this entire outrage, where this bill seemingly started. So what do you think? Now, I can't rule out the idea that banning TikTok would in some way make America safer from foreign threats, right? People have made the same argument to justify everything from outlawing encryption to gelling whistleblowers. At the end of the day, you and I, we have to decide and choose between safety and freedom. Like Benjamin Franklin famously said, those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety.